Is it worth paying $30 on Disney Plus for their premiere access to watch it? Is it worth paying $10 at your local Cineplex to watch it? Let's talk about Disney's Cruella. Hey guys, Dan here. This is Dan Reviews It, and welcome to my spoiler-free review for the new Disney film Cruella. You can watch it on Disney Plus if you pay the $30 into their premiere access program for this film, or you can go to your local movie theater and get a ticket there. Those are the two ways, really, you can see this film at this point in time. I'm sure, like Mulan last year and a lot of the other Disney Plus stuff, you'll be able to get it for free on Disney Plus if you wait like 2 to 3 months maybe, but for right now, these are basically your options. Before we get started, I do want to thank you for finding this video. Welcome to Dan Reviews It. If you are new here, I would encourage you to think about subscribing down below there, even hitting that notification bell so you get notifications of all my new movie reviews. And if you're a Disney fan, I am going through all of the classic Disney films as well. We're up to almost number 50, which somewhere in there is 101 Dalmatians. Probably later this year, I'll be tackling that movie as a classic, which of course is where this movie gets its inspiration from. So let's start there. So this is yet another of the Disney live-action versions, but much like Maleficent and not so much like The Lion King or The Jungle Book, this is not the same story. It's an origin story. It is telling us about the villain of, in this case, 101 Dalmatians, Cruella DeVil, played here by Emma Stone. And Emma Thompson is here as well as her boss slash maybe a little bit of a mentor, but mostly a nemesis, mostly the villain. So we see how that plays out as the story goes. We take place really in the 70s and the 80s of the fashion industry. And really, that's one of my problems with the film, is that the timeline doesn't match up at all. I mean, 101 Dalmatians is from the early 60s, and by all accounts takes place in that era, or maybe even a little bit beforehand. So really, they're sort of playing fast and loose with the timeline of Cruella DeVil's character. At least in Maleficent, well, it takes place in sort of, I don't know, ancient times, or not ancient times, but, like the era of the castles and 1700s, 1800s, doesn't matter. It takes place long before the present day. Maleficent was able to do that, but here we've advanced the story several decades as we meet Cruella DeVil. So we see her first as a young girl, getting a lot of trouble at school, having some issues, and then as the story moves along, her mother leaves her an orphan, and so she decides to go into fashion, and there sort of gets her foot in the door and ends up meeting the Emma Thompson character, who is a big, fashion icon of the time. I mean, it's basically Miranda Priestley from The Devil Wears Prada. Okay. So this movie is an amalgamation of many, many different movies. I'd say there's not hardly one original thought in the film. So let's start there. Let's start with Devil Wears Prada. But also there's shades of Joker here, which also is obviously a movie that took some liberties, let's say, with that character and his origin. And here we're seeing a lot of that same thing. But I mean, there's a lot of movies at play here. Birds of Prey a little bit with Harley Quinn, because that's clearly the look sort of that Emma Stone is going for, and she's kind of like a rocker as well, so it's like there's a little shades of that. There's a lot of different movies being sort of pulled from, and then there's the soundtrack, which is the most generic soundtrack you can think of. I mean, every song that's ever been in a movie multiple times, you'll find it here. From, there's, Time of the Season by the Zombies, and Hush by, I forget who originally did that, but Kula Shaker did a version in the 90s. I forget who did it originally, but anyway, that's, like a classic that appears in a bunch of movies. And, Blondie, One Way or Another, and Clash, and all of these songs are just so by the book, by the numbers, and that is what this movie is all about. Going for, and I don't think it's, I don't think this is what they meant, like, let's just copy from every movie, but that's how it ended up. on the screen. Every single thing about this movie takes from something else, even to some degrees, the Superman story, because she's, Cruella, and she's doing her own thing, trying to take down the Emma Thompson character, after some things that she learns about her. But then she's, her alter ego working for Thompson, and I don't know who this Cruella is, and it's like, okay, we got it. She put glasses on her, and her hair is not, the two-tone black and white we're used to seeing with Cruella. Okay, so you must be a different person. It's like it even steals that old tired trope. All right, so obviously these are a lot of negatives. Okay, so let's talk about some positives because there are some. It's not the worst of the Disney remakes. That belongs, I guess, to Maleficent 2, although that Lion King that came out was, I mean, visually it was appealing, but, it was basically a shot-for-shot remake of the original. It did not ever need to be made. And that sort of, is another, I guess, problem with this one before I get to the positives. Did anybody ask for this movie? Did we learn anything really about the Cruella character? I guess we sort of did, but since it's such a retcon of the 101 Dalmatians movie, it almost seems irrelevant. In that Joker fashion where it's like, okay, well, that was kind of a cool movie, I guess, even though it's basically Taxi Driver but with the Joker. But like, does it fit into the Batman saga at all? And the answer is no. And I'm not too sure that this really fits that well into the Cruella DeVil 101 Dalmatian story either. But okay, so let's get to some of the positives. I do actually appreciate that the powers that be at Disney went in a different direction and said, okay, well, let's not just do a straight ahead remake. Let's do a different interpretation of the character. It worked for us in Maleficent. I mean, okay, middling, I think, for the Disney remakes, but Maleficent made a bunch of money, so okay, fine, we'll do that. But then number two on that is they already did 101 Dalmatians live-action version. It was really their first one of the live-action remakes back in the 90s with Glenn Close, and I saw it in theaters, and it was great. And I mean, I haven't seen it since, so maybe it's not great, and I'm remembering wrong. But as a teenager, I thought it was really fun, really great. Loved Glenn Close in it. So okay, they already kind of did the remake version, so they sort of had to do something different. But I will admit, Cruella DeVil is one of my all-time favorite Disney villains. So I didn't mind that we got an origin story. But why is it so generic? I don't know. But so it's a slight positive that they're doing something different as opposed to just remaking The Lion King again, which was, again, just so bland and not worth, the price of admission. Another thing that I really liked about this movie, and this is no surprise, Emma Stone and Thompson are great. They're fantastic. Stone is really, really eating this role up. She's loving it. She's having a blast. And I like that she is one of these chameleon actresses these days. I mean, you always know it's Emma Stone, but a chameleon in the sense of she really can do any genre you throw her way. She's done, these heavy dramas. She did the musical with La La Land. Obviously she's done a bunch of comedies in her day, but this sort of throws a little bit of everything into that mix. And I thought she gave a great performance. And Emma Thompson, again, always good. Really, though, the character they wrote for her is essentially just a carbon copy of Miranda Priestley. And so for that, I gotta dock it some points. Again, performance, great, but the character, the way it was written, very, very derivative. So those are a couple of the positives. Couple more negatives before we go. It's too long. It's 2 hours and 17 minutes. You could easily shave 20, 25 minutes off of this movie, and I think it actually would be better for it. Because I'm not sure we needed all the buildup. It was quite a long buildup the first 40 minutes of the movie. And then along with that, I'm not exactly sure who this movie is for, if not, adults or teenagers. I mean, it's not for kids. It's PG-13, which this is the first of the Disney remakes that's PG-13, except for Mulan. Mulan makes sense. There's a lot of fighting, and combat and stuff in that. But here, I mean, there's a lot of, alcohol and smoking and people lighting things on fire and people being lit on fire and some very nefarious people that, wield some pretty heavy power that maybe if this were made in the 90s, it would have gotten a PG, but this day and age, this is definitely, too violent. So parents seeing Cruella and, oh, Disney's Cruella, oh, cool, like let's take little Johnny and Jamie, who are 6 and 8 years old. I think this is not for them. I think the parents will be, granted the PG-13 rating should have tipped them off, but parents, that doesn't matter. When I took my nephew to the PG-13 Ninja Turtles a few years ago, I mean, there were like 3-year-olds in the audience and just, oh, loving those turtles. So it does need to be PG-13, but I don't think parents care. And I think that may be a Disney issue more than anything because, they're known kind of for their family-friendly stuff. And all of these remakes have been in that vein until you got to Mulan, like I said. So I just don't think it's a good idea to take young kids to this movie. I think even the original cartoon version of Cruella DeVil is frightening enough for young kids. This takes it, to another level. So overall, this was a disappointment. I was really looking forward to this movie, and it just did not hit the mark for me. Maybe if it did a few things that weren't so by the book, derivative, what have you, the soundtrack, some of the choices in the characters, some of the characters themselves, it just borrows from way too much. And all of the things it borrows from are better movies. Devil Wears Prada is, probably a top 100 movie of all time for me. Love that thing. Joker, I kind of rag on now because it really is just Taxi Driver and it has nothing to do with the Joker character. But, I did think it did a lot of interesting things and I like the performance. So the performances here is sort of what skates this by with a higher grade than it maybe even deserves. And it's not a high grade at all, but I leave this one with a slightly below average C minus. Really, I don't think it's worth the $30. Maybe $10 at the theater, okay, or just wait a couple of months until it's on Disney Plus for free would be my recommendation. But there you have it. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you back here next time.